If you just happen to pick up the last generation cooler, you might want to brace yourself for this video. But if you absolutely have to watch, just try to stay cool. I mean, what you have is good enough, right? Do not get all worked up about it. In an era where 35 to 36 watts active magnetic cooling is pretty much the norm, with power levels almost maxed out, what exactly gives the Red Magic Cooler 8 Pro the guts to claim it is a generational leap ahead? Is it really that effective, or is it all just talk? Let us find out. We will not be focusing on the relatively lightweight Air version, but we will take a quick look at it as well. Picking up the Red Magic 8 Pro, you will notice its design follows the same compact rounded square philosophy as before, but now by adding more layers to the casing and rounding out the edges, it does its best to look as small as possible, but it still cannot quite hide that raw aggressive vibe. Overall, it is a sizable step up from the previous model, now placing it in the same league as the Black Shark 5 Pro. It weighs in at 115 grams, and when you combine that with its deep glossy carbon fiber texture, if the Black Shark 5 Pro vaguely resembles a supercar, then this exceptionally robust and rugged Red Magic is undoubtedly a Dark Knight-style armored battle tank, just brimming with power. But of course, there is no need to be too concerned. Despite its imposing look, it actually feels fine once you clip it on. After all, if you really want to get technical, the Red Magic is still the narrowest in its class. It looks like they have optimized the diffuser for the RGB lighting. It is still just as dazzling, but the transitions feel a bit more natural and smooth now. The lighting can be toggled on and off independently, and it supports 3 lighting effects plus full color customization. The only catch is you cannot manually input specific color codes. Also, there is no dedicated desktop mode for setup. Overall, the lighting features are pretty streamlined this time around. But what is really surprising is that the devs decided to get creative and slapped a layer of thermosensitive material right onto the heatsink. It turns blue when heated, and the color change point is right around when the cold plate drops to about 0 degrees Celsius. So as the cold side gets colder and the hot side heats up, you get this visual indicator. The lower the cooling temperature, the bluer the heatsink becomes. And when the hot side cools down, it turns back to black. A pretty neat little touch, I would say. As for other changes, they have ditched the wobbly low-friction toggle switch from the 6 Pro for a press button one this time. It is also nice and large, which is a huge improvement in feel. So all in all, even though they did not push the modular concept this time, it actually feels like the design is much more polished and complete than before. Both the build quality and the attention to detail are clearly a step up. So what do you guys think of the Red Magic 8 Pro's design? Let me know in the comments what score you would give it. As is tradition, I have already gone ahead and taken one apart, so let us take a quick look inside. You could say it is a departure from the usual industry practices. Red Magic's internal design has been pretty elegant these past couple of years. There are no hidden screws, no weirdly nested components, and no awkward clips. And there is none of that tangled wiring that you would have to cut to even get apart. Everything is where it is supposed to be, very neat and tidy, which makes it super easy to repair down the line. Moving from the bottom up, the cold surface area has increased by about 10%, and the thermal conductive pad is noticeably thinner. However, the vapor chamber itself is just as thick as before. It is also worth noting that Red Magic has packed a ton of thermal paste inside this time, not just on the cold side, but on the hot side as well. Even after cleaning off about 30% of it, there is still this huge blob left. The cooling plate itself has been upgraded across the board. Now, 36 watts of power is not exactly groundbreaking, but the 30% surge in the number of PN junctions is something you really need to pay attention to. That is not a detail to be overlooked. Thanks to the increased internal space and the switch to an ultra-thin fan module, the heatsink area has absolutely skyrocketed. Even the Black Shark 5 Pro looks a bit small next to it, but a key thing to note is that the liquid cooling plate from the last model is gone. The back of the PCB is now fully thermally insulated, and the front is coated with waterproof paint. Both of these were missing from the last model. The fan module is now 27% thinner, and they have bumped the blades up to 11. They have even given the surface a carbon fiber texture to match the casing, which is a nice touch. This time around, the app also supports fan speed control in addition to temperature and power settings. You get 10 manual cooling levels, ranging from a low of 3000 RPM all the way up to 6500. And the crazy part is it literally locks in at 6500 RPM. That is insane. Thanks to this, the airflow is insane. For the upcoming tests, we will mainly focus on its maximum capabilities, specifically manual level 9 and the destroyer mode. First up, the warm-up no-load test, and the Red Magic 8 Pro is, as expected, absolutely on another level. In the 25 degrees Celsius to 0 degrees Celsius phase, its initial cooling speed shot straight up to 178.6% of the previous models, which is nearly double the speed. Its peak power hit 36.7 watts with an average of 29.6 watts, and after hitting 0 degrees Celsius, it averaged a brutal minus 12 degrees Celsius. But destructo mode is even more insane, pushing the peak power to an unbelievable 38.7 watts. Averaging 31.8 watts, it can reach an average of minus 13.8 degrees Celsius after hitting 0, with a minimum of minus 14.4 degrees. In terms of pure cooling performance, these two modes represent a 15.4% and 32.7% improvement over the previous model respectively. 32.7% with an improvement of this magnitude. It is no wonder they called it the 8 Pro. If they had just called it a 7, that would probably be a bit of an understatement. So what about the Air version? We have talked about this type of design before. Even though its power is relatively low, the cooling surface area is small and it is made of metal. This allows the cooling power to be highly concentrated and conducted extremely quickly, giving it a significant natural advantage under no-load conditions. It is a special case, so this ultra-low temperature is not a great indicator of its real-world performance, so just take it with a grain of salt. We have updated all devices to their latest firmware for our comparison. We are looking at previous Black Shark 5 Pro and Flight DGB 8X at their highest settings. First off, compared to when they were first released, the performance of these two has not really changed, but their stability has definitely improved. Then for the Red Magic 8 Pro's destroy mode, whether it is cooling speed or temperature drop, it is in a league of its own. Once it hits 0 degrees Celsius, its average temperature is even a bit lower than the Black Shark 5 Pro's minimum. Overall, it is about a step ahead of the Black Shark 5 Pro and 2 steps ahead of the Fly DGB-8X. Now the Fly DGB-8X deserves a bit of an explanation. I mean, after all, this thing's power draw is not as crazy. Its main selling point is efficiency, right? It only needs an average of less than 24 watts to match the no-load performance of the Red Magic 6 Pro, and in that regard, it is still a beast even to this day. Finally, the Red Magic 8 Pro's manual max setting, while it shares the same ultimate cooling speed as the destroy mode, does not cool quite as much. Compared to the Black Shark 5 Pro's max setting, there is a difference of about 1 degree Celsius, and the reason for that is pretty straightforward. With a similar framework, higher power almost always guarantees a lower no-load temperature. In this case, the Black Shark is, after all, 1.2 watts higher. Of course, as we all know, no-load tests are more about evaluating the absolute cooling power. If the heat dissipation is not up to snuff, the performance under a real load will often take a hit. So to really put it to the test, we are going all out today. Alright, let us move on to the next test. We are skipping the whole stress test rigmarole and going straight to a constant load showdown. First, a quick rundown of the setup. These little gadgets are pretty much hand-built, so they're super simple. At its core is a ceramic heating element. Once powered, it continuously generates heat, creating a tug-of-war effect against the cooler. So once the contact surface temperature has basically stabilized, whichever cooler shows a lower reading is naturally the more powerful one. We tested the load box itself and measured a peak power draw of 19.4 watts with an average of 17 watts at a room temperature of 25 degrees Celsius. Running with no load, it triggers the thermal protection and automatically stops heating after about 6 minutes, reaching a maximum temperature of 73.8 degrees Celsius. Now keep in mind, this peak temperature is just the result of letting it run on its own for a while. It does not really have much to do with the actual test. So just because you slap a cooler on it does not mean it can handle over 70 degrees Celsius, let alone calculate a temperature drop. That is just complete nonsense. In reality, we just need to focus on the power, excluding any losses. Now for today's load test. The maximum stable continuous power it can handle is around 16.5 to 17 watts, which is way more intense than most phones and tablets on the market today. So yeah, it is definitely more than enough. First off, the standard Air model, while it shows some impressive numbers on its own thanks to a natural advantage, under load it is back to reality. Just like its 18 watts rated power, its actual performance is only about 50 to 60% of the Pro versions. So it is more suitable for a basic cooling experience, or better yet, it is best paired with phones that have built-in magnets like the iPhone for direct contact. As for the Pro version, all I can say is my heart goes out to anyone who just bought the previous model. You cannot even call this a simple upgrade anymore. The 8 Pro's improvement is so geometric, so massive. It is hard to believe it is even related to the 6 Pro. And its insane destroy mode, well, that speaks for itself. After half an hour of handling a 17 watts load, the contact surface's peak temperature did not even break 30 degrees Celsius, averaging just 28.6 degrees Celsius. That is a performance boost of nearly 40%. That is just terrifyingly good. But what is really interesting is the manual max setting. It only draws 1 watt more power on average than the 6 Pro, but its cooling performance skyrockets by at least 34%, running just 2 degrees warmer than the God of Destruction mode. This also reverses the no-load performance trend, making it absolutely unrivaled. So if we are using the Black Shark as our benchmark, so the Red Magic 8 Pro's destroy mode is at least 11.3% more effective, but only consumes 2.2% more power. At its maximum manual setting, it is 4.4% more powerful, while actually consuming 4.8% less power. And one last thing for those of you who are curious, let us take a quick look at the pure cooling power of these devices when they are all set to the same target temperature. Alright, for the in-game test, I do not really have any other suitable phones on hand. They either do not have enough performance headroom or I cannot monitor their internal temps. So I would just have to make do with the Red Magic 11 Air. The phone's internal fan was kept on and the room temperature was 25 degrees Celsius. As for Honkai Star Rail, there's not much to say about the frame rate, and with the Red Magic, you know the drill. It just goes full throttle. No matter what, using a cooler makes no real difference, and its performance is exactly the same as when it first launched. It just sits there, stable at a full 80-ish FPS. However, it is worth noting that as the phone's temperature drops, its average power consumption also decreases. This might introduce a slight variable, but the outcome was never in doubt. So let us talk about the Red Magic 8 Pro. The phone's temperature dropped from 51.4 to 38 degrees Celsius, a 13.4 degree drop. That is 1.8 degrees cooler than the Black Shark 5 Pro, and 2.1 degrees cooler than the Fly DGB-8X. The internal cooling performance pretty much mirrors the surface temperature drop, and if you look at the thermal map, it is not hard to see that the Red Magic is just on another level, right? Look at that deep blue. Of course, if you do not need this much brute force, you can just crank it up to the max manual setting. The cooling is a bit less intense than in Berserker mode, but it is still better than the other two plus. Maybe the temperature was just right, and the machine spirit was pleased, because the frame rate score went up by another 2 points. In terms of noise, the fan module's performance is actually quite good this time around. Although the max manual setting is almost identical in specs to the 6 Pro's overclocked mode, this time around there is no noticeable whine. So in terms of actual sound, it is definitely much quieter. As for destroy mode, well, since it is locked at 6,500 RPM, it gets pretty loud. You can even feel some vibration. So in terms of overall cooling performance, unless you are dealing with extreme scenarios or need to cool something like a tablet, maxing out the manual mode is more than enough. Alright, to sum it all up, the new Red Magic Cooler 8 Pro shows a clear visible improvement in everything from its build quality and materials to the finer details. The actual cooling performance far exceeded my expectations, but what is truly impressive is its exceptional load handling capability. Now, whether it is a generational leap compared to its competitors, not just its own predecessor, that might be up for debate. After all, everyone has their own standards. But one thing is for sure, looking at all the coolers we have ever reviewed, this one is definitely a labor of love. If you are chasing the ultimate experience, it is absolutely worth considering. So what do you guys think of Red Magic's performance this time around? Let us know in the comments if the real-world performance meets your expectations and share your thoughts. That is all for this video. Thanks for watching. This is Big Hand Bro, and I will see you in the next one.